My name is Simin Zargaran. I'm an Iranian artist, educator, and PhD candidate in art education and women's gender and sexuality studies at the Temsec, here at Temsec. Today, I want to share how I experience sustainability. Through my body, my research, and through my project. I will explore how sustainability can be understood through care, memory, and lived experience. But I want to ask a different question. How does it mean to sustain a life, memory, or a sense of belonging? I speak to you from a very specific place. I am an Iranian woman living in diaspora. I am also a mother. I am someone who has experienced distance from family, from my language, and from my homeland, Iran. So for me, sustainability is not abstract. It is about how I continue, how I care, and how I carry what I cannot leave behind. When we hear the word sustainability, we often think about the environment, climate, or the resources. But I want to shift this idea. What if sustainability is also about sustaining the imagination, sustaining culture, and sustaining emotional life? For example, what sustains a child's sense of possibility? What sustains hope when a system collapses? And these questions are also about sustainability for me. My research focuses on Kanun, the Institute for the Intellectual Development of Children and Young Adults in Iran. Kanun was not just an educational institution. It created spaces for children where they could read, watch films, make art, and think freely. There were no exams, no pressure, and there was just only curiosity. But what is important is that Kanun was not limited to big cities. It actively reached rural and rural and underserved areas through mobile libraries and cultural centers, bringing books, films, and art to children across the country. In this way, Kanun functioned as a national infrastructure of care. It expanded across not just to education, but to imagination. And it made cultural resources available to children regardless of where they live. In that sense, Kanun sustains something very important, the inner life of children. And I believe sustaining imagination is as important as sustaining natural resources. One of my projects is called Kanun Map of Care. In this project, I map the locations of Kanun Center across Iran. But I am not just mapping geography, I am mapping access, care, and possibility. Each point on the map represents a place where a child could imagine differently. So mapping becomes a way of asking where does care exist and where it is missing. In each of these locations, a child could enter a space where imagination was taken serious. The child could sit on the floor, read and watch films and think differently. For many children, this was the only place where this kind of experiences exists. So this project asks a simple question. What if sustainability is not about preserving land, but also about sustaining imagination? Because when imagination disappears, something essential is lost. As I said, the Kanun was not just limited to big cities, and they bring some mobile libraries to rural areas also. My second project is called Body Library of Care. This project is deeply personal for me. It's about pregnancy, migration, and motherhood. When I moved across countries, I realized something. Even when you lose access to institutions, you still carry memory in your body. This project includes photographs of my body during pregnancy, materials I carried across borders, and objects that hold emotional weights. These are not just personal images. These are records of care, displacement, and survival. So I started thinking of a body as a library, an archive of care, pain, and transformation. And in this sense, sustainability becomes something very embodied. When institutions fail, the body remembers, and in this way, the body becomes a site of sustainability. And this brings me to the situation of Iran today. In recent months, Iran has been living through overlapping crises, internal repression, economic collapse, and escalating military conflict. And January 2026 until now, a large-scale attacks by the US and Israel targeting Iranian infrastructure, leadership, and military sites, intensifying instability and violence across the region. At the same time, inside Iran, the state forces have continued patterns of control, repression, and restriction of freedom. A lot of political execution, especially during protests. Women and young people have been at the center of these movements, demanding dignity, freedom, and justice. At the same time, there have been internet shutdowns, censorship, and limited access to information. So when we talk about sustainability in this context, the question becomes very different. It is no longer only how do we sustain the environment, it's about how do people sustain hope, how do they sustain resistance, how do people sustain life under pressure. So for me, it's more complicated. I have lived experience that do not fit into simple categories. For example, there are moments where people speak about resisting imperial power. And at the same time, I feel discomfort because some of the institutions being defended are also connected to my own experience of fear and trauma. This is why I believe that sustainability is fluid. It is not fixed and it is not universal. It must be understood through lived experience. And this is where listening becomes very essential. If we do not listen to women, to marginalized community, to people living through crisis, then sustainability becomes incomplete because we are sustaining systems but not people. In my teaching, I try to practice sustainability through feminist pedagogy. This means that creating a space of care, allowing students to feel they belong and valuing their experiences as knowledge. Because a classroom can also be a sustainable space if it sustains voice, imagination, and connection. I would like to ask you a question. What is something in your life that you are trying to sustain? It can include a relationship, a memory, a creative practice, or even a sense of self. This is where sustainability begins, not in theory, not in lived experience. To conclude, I want to return to this idea that sustainability is not only about preserving the future, it's about caring for what allows life to continue in all of its steps. Through art, memory, and care, we create spaces where life can be sustained. And perhaps the most important things that we can do is listen carefully, imagine differently, and care intentionally. Thank you.